Blood glistened crimson on the pristine snow as Lily Fairchild struggled forward through the howling Montana blizzard of 1885. Each labored step sinking knee-deep into the merciless white expanse that threatened to become her final resting place. The bitter December wind sliced through her sodden wool coat, transforming the melted snow into sheets of ice against her shivering skin. Lily's fingers had long since lost feeling, her once nimble hands that so skillfully prepared medicinal tinctures now clumsy and useless, as she clutched her doctor's bag, the proof of her unconventional profession, and the reason she'd been summoned to the remote Taylor homestead, where a young mother struggled with a breech birth. "Just a little farther," Lily whispered to herself, her voice immediately swallowed by the roaring wind. She had left her horse behind nearly an hour ago when the poor beast had stumbled into a snow-covered ravine, breaking its leg. The merciful bullet she'd put through its head still echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of how easily life could be extinguished in this unforgiving territory. At 24, Lily had seen her share of death. As one of the few female doctors in the Montana Territory, she had fought prejudice and skepticism at every turn. Philadelphia, educated and determined to prove herself, she had accepted the position in the frontier town of Whiteridge despite her family's protests. Her father's final words still rang in her ears. "You'll freeze to death in that God-forsaken wilderness before you ever change a single mind." Perhaps he had been right after all. Lily stumbled, falling face first into the snow. The cold shocked her lungs, momentarily stealing her breath. She struggled to rise, but her limbs refused to cooperate, the weight of exhaustion pressing her deeper into what felt increasingly like a soft, cold bed. How easy it would be to rest here, just for a moment. "No," she shouted, forcing herself to her knees. Mrs. Taylor needed her. The baby needed her. She would not be defeated by nature, not when lives depended on her reaching her destination. But as she rose shakily to her feet, Lily realized with growing terror that she could no longer determine which direction to travel. The swirling snow had obliterated her tracks and the landmarks she'd been using to navigate. The world had become a disorienting white void, with no distinction between earth and sky. Her mind, increasingly foggy from the cold, recalled stories of frontier travelers found frozen solid just yards from shelter they couldn't see through blizzard conditions. Would that be her fate? To die so close to safety, unable to save herself or the young mother awaiting her help? Lily took another step, then another, her movements mechanical now, driven by stubborn determination rather than hope. The medical bag clutched to her chest felt impossibly heavy. Her eyelashes frosted over, ice crystals forming on her brows and the loose strands of auburn hair that had escaped her bonnet. She didn't hear the approaching horse over the screaming wind, didn't sense another presence until a dark shape materialized beside her in the white chaos. Lily's frost-numbed mind registered the silhouette of a man on horseback, tall and broad-shouldered against the blinding snow. "Madam," the deep voice barely penetrated her consciousness. "What in God's name are you doing out here?" Lily tried to respond, but her lips wouldn't form the words. Her legs finally surrendered beneath her, and she collapsed into the snow. Strong hands caught her before she fully hit the ground. Through half-frozen eyelids, she glimpsed a weathered face beneath a snow-dusted Stetson, concerned blue eyes, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, and lips moving with words she couldn't quite hear. "Taylor," she managed to croak. "Baby coming. Breach." The stranger's expression shifted to understanding. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms and placed her on his horse, mounting behind her and wrapping her in what felt like a buffalo hide. The warmth of his body against her back was the last sensation Lily registered before darkness claimed her. Cole Callahan had seen his share of desperate situations during his 15 years on the frontier, but finding a half-frozen woman trudging through the worst blizzard in recent memory ranked among the most unexpected. As he cradled her unconscious form against his chest, one arm secure around her waist while the other guided his trusted paint stallion through the treacherous terrain, he wondered what circumstances could possibly drive someone to brave such deadly conditions alone. "Hang on," he murmured, though he doubted she could hear him. Just a little farther to shelter. Cole had been tracking a mountain lion that had been preying on his cattle when the storm hit, forcing him to abandon the hunt and seek refuge. His line shack lay less than a mile ahead, a simple one-room structure built for precisely these situations, stocked with provisions and firewood that might mean the difference between life and death for them both. The woman stirred slightly against him, mumbling something unintelligible. He tightened his hold, concerned by how little resistance her body offered. Even through his thick gloves and her sodden clothing, he could feel the dangerous chill that had settled into her flesh. Her face, what little he could see of it beneath her frost-covered bonnet, was alarmingly pale, her lips tinged with blue. "Stay with me," Cole urged, spurring Diablo forward through a drift that reached the horse's chest. The stallion snorted in protest but pushed through, his powerful muscles straining beneath them. When the dark outline of the line shack finally appeared through the curtain of snow, Cole nearly sagged with relief. He guided Diablo to the small attached lean-to that served as a makeshift stable, dismounting carefully while maintaining his grip on the woman. The wind howled mercilessly as he carried her to the cabin door, struggling to manipulate the latch with one hand while holding her with the other. Once inside, he kicked the door shut behind them, plunging them into near-total darkness save for the faint gray light filtering through the single small window. Cole gently laid her on the narrow cot against the wall, then moved quickly to light the oil lamp on the rough-hewn table. In its warm glow, he got his first clear look at the woman he'd rescued. Despite her dire condition, he couldn't help but notice her striking features: high cheekbones, a delicate nose, and auburn hair escaping from beneath her bonnet. She was slender but not frail, her hands surprisingly calloused for a woman of what appeared to be gentle breeding, judging by the quality of her clothing beneath the trail dust and snow. A leather bag lay beside her, emblazoned with a medical caduceus. Understanding dawned on Cole. She must be the new doctor he'd heard had arrived in Whiteridge several months ago. He'd been meaning to make the trip into town, but the demands of his ranch had kept him isolated through the autumn months. "Doctor." Cole touched her shoulder gently, receiving no response. Her breathing was shallow, her skin ice-cold. Years of frontier survival had taught him enough to recognize severe exposure when he saw it. Working quickly, Cole built a fire in the small stone hearth, feeding it carefully until flames leapt high. He filled his only pot with snow and set it to melt for hot water, then turned his attention back to the unconscious woman. What followed was a battle against propriety that Cole knew he must lose if she were to survive. Her wet clothing was slowly killing her, each sodden layer drawing precious heat from her core. With practiced efficiency but respectful care, he removed her outer garments, coat, boots, stockings, averting his eyes as much as possible while still ensuring he was helping rather than harming. He wrapped her in every blanket he possessed, then added his own dry coat for good measure. Still, her shivering continued unabated, her breathing growing more labored by the minute. Cole ran a hand through his hair, contemplating what he knew of surviving extreme cold. Body heat was the most effective remedy, but that would require— he shook his head, dismissing the thought. Surely there was another way. The woman moaned softly, her eyelids fluttering without opening. "Cold," she whispered, the word barely audible. "So cold." Cole made his decision. Propriety be damned, he wouldn't let her die from misplaced modesty. He added another log to the fire, then carefully slid beneath the blankets beside her, pulling her gently against his chest. He kept a layer of blanket between them for whatever scrap of decency that might preserve, but positioned himself so his body heat could reach her effectively. "I apologize for the liberty, Doctor," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "But I'm trying to save your life, not take advantage." As the blizzard raged outside, howling like a living creature seeking entry, Cole held the mysterious doctor close, willing his warmth into her chilled body. He had no idea what circumstances had brought her to his path, but as her shivering gradually subsided and her breathing deepened, he found himself profoundly grateful that their paths had crossed when they did. Lily drifted through layers of consciousness, vaguely aware of warmth gradually seeping back into her body. Her mind conjured fragmented images: her father's disapproving face as she boarded the train west, the young mother she was supposed to help, the endless white landscape that had nearly claimed her life. And then, a new image: intense blue eyes filled with concern, strong arms lifting her from certain death. She forced her eyelids open, wincing at the effort this simple action required. Firelight danced across rough-hewn log walls, casting flickering shadows in a small, unfamiliar room. The scent of coffee and something savory registered, making her suddenly aware of the hollow ache in her stomach. More disorienting was the realization that she was not alone. A man stood at a small cast-iron stove, his broad back to her as he tended to whatever was cooking. He was tall, with dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck, and shoulders that spoke of years of physical labor. Lily tried to sit up and found herself wrapped in multiple layers of blankets. The movement, slight as it was, caught the man's attention. He turned, revealing the face she half remembered from her rescue, weathered by sun and wind, with a strong jaw, straight nose, and those remarkable blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. "You're awake," he said, his deep voice resonating in the small space. "How do you feel?" Lily took stock of her condition before answering, the physician in her automatically assessing her symptoms. "Like I've been trampled by a herd of buffalo," she admitted hoarsely. "But alive, which is more than I expected." She paused, suddenly aware of an alarming detail. "My clothes," a flush crept up the man's neck. "Had to remove the wet ones. They're drying by the fire. I kept your undergarments on and looked away as much as possible. It was necessary to prevent the cold from killing you." Lily nodded, professional understanding overriding embarrassment. "Of course. You did the right thing. Hypothermia requires immediate removal of wet clothing and application of external heat." She attempted a small smile. "I should know, I'm a doctor." "I figured as much from your bag." He gestured toward her medical case, which sat safely on a small table. "Cole Callahan, madam. This is my line shack. My ranch is about 15 miles east of here." "Lily Fairchild," she replied. "I practice in Whiteridge." Sudden alarm shot through her as memory returned fully. "The Taylors. I was heading to their homestead. Mrs. Taylor is in labor with a breech presentation. I need to." She struggled against the blankets, attempting to rise. Cole moved quickly to her side, gently but firmly pressing her back down. "You're in no condition to go anywhere, Dr. Fairchild. That storm hasn't let up a bit. It's certain death to attempt travel now." "But she needs medical attention," Lily protested weakly, even as her body betrayed her with a wave of dizziness. "The Taylor's place is nearly 10 miles from here," Cole said, his voice gentle but brooking no argument. Even if we could make it through this blizzard, which we can't, you'd never survive the journey in your condition. Lily closed her eyes, anguish washing over her. Another failure. Another woman she couldn't help. She could die, she whispered. The baby, too. And you certainly would die trying to reach them, Cole countered. He hesitated, then added, Mrs. Taylor isn't without help. Her mother has birthed 12 children of her own, and her sister-in-law is a midwife from back east. They sent for you as a precaution, not because they were helpless. This information provided Lily some small comfort, though the doctor in her chafed at being unable to reach her patient. She nodded reluctantly, acknowledging the reality of their situation. How long have I been here? She asked, noting the quality of light through the small window suggested late afternoon, though it was difficult to tell through the continuing snowfall. About 6 hours, Cole replied, returning to the stove. You were nearly gone when I found you. Another few minutes in that cold, and I wouldn't have been able to bring you back. The matter-of-fact way he described her near-death experience sent a shiver through Lily that had nothing to do with the cold. Then, I owe you my life, Mr. Callahan. He shook his head, ladling something from a pot into a tin cup. Cole, please, and you don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same. Not anyone would have been riding in that blizzard to begin with, Lily pointed out. Why were you out there? He approached with the steaming cup, helping her sit up slightly to drink. Mountain lion's been taking my calves. I was tracking it when the storm hit. Couldn't make it back to the main house, so I headed for this shelter instead. A slight smile crossed his face. Lucky for both of us. The broth was simple, some kind of game meat with a few root vegetables, but it tasted like heaven to Lily's parched throat and empty stomach. As strength gradually returned to her limbs, she took in more details of her surroundings and her rescuer. The cabin was small but meticulously maintained, with a neat stack of firewood beside the stone hearth, shelves of provisions organized with military precision, and a few books on a crude shelf, unexpected in a lined shack. Cole himself moved with the easy grace of a man comfortable in his own skin, his actions efficient without being hurried. He wasn't what she'd expected of a rancher in this remote territory. There was an intelligence in his eyes that spoke of education, and a gentleness in his manner at odds with his rugged appearance. The way he'd cared for her professional, respectful despite the intimate circumstances, told her much about his character. How long have you been in Montana territory, Cole? Lily asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. He glanced up from where he was adding wood to the fire. 15 years, give or take. Came west after the war between the states. Needed open sky after what I'd seen. The shadow that crossed his face told Lily not to press further on that particular topic. And your ranch, built it from nothing, he said, pride evident in his voice. Started with 10 acres and a broken-down cabin. Now I've got 500 acres and 50 head of cattle. Nothing compared to the big outfits, but it's mine. He paused. What about you? Not many women doctors out here or anywhere, for that matter. Lily sipped more broth before answering. Graduated from the Woman's Medical College of Pennsylvania 2 years ago. Practiced in Philadelphia for a year, but... She hesitated, unsure how to explain the constant battles, the daily indignities, the patients who refused to be treated by a lady doctor despite her qualifications. But it wasn't what you expected, Cole finished for her, surprising her with his perception. No, Lily admitted. I thought coming west would be different. People here need doctors desperately. I hoped they'd care less about my gender and more about my skills. And have they? A wry smile touched her lips. Some. The women mostly. A few of the men usually after I've treated their wives or children successfully. Others remain, Skeptical, Cole nodded thoughtfully. Frontiers slow to change in some ways, quick in others. People out here judge you more on what you can do than who you are, but old prejudices die hard. He met her eyes directly. For what it's worth, I'd trust a doctor who'd brave a blizzard for a patient. The simple statement warmed Lily more than the fire or blankets. She had grown so accustomed to defending her abilities and her choices that unquestioning acceptance felt almost foreign. Outside, the wind howled with renewed fury, rattling the single window. Cole glanced toward it with a frown. Storm's getting worse. Might be here a couple of days before it's safe to travel. The implications of his statement hung in the air between them, two strangers, confined to a single room barely 10 feet square, with one narrow cot and limited supplies. "I'll sleep on the floor," Cole said, anticipating her concern. "You need the cot to recover your strength." Lily opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Her body still felt leaden, every muscle aching from the ordeal. She knew, medically speaking, that she needed proper rest to fully recover from her brush with hypothermia. "Thank you," she said instead. "For everything." As the afternoon deepened into evening, the tiny cabin became a world unto itself, separated from reality by walls of wind-driven snow. Cole proved to be an attentive but unobtrusive caretaker, ensuring Lily had everything she needed while maintaining a respectful distance. By nightfall, Lily found herself able to sit up properly, wrapped in a blanket and one of Cole's spare shirts, her own clothes still drying by the fire. They shared a simple meal of beans, jerky, and hardtack, which Cole apologized for repeatedly. "Not exactly what you're used to, I imagine," he said, as he offered her a tin plate. Lily accepted it with genuine appreciation. "After nearly freezing to death, Mr. Callahan, plain food tastes better than the finest Philadelphia restaurant fare." As they ate, Cole told her about his ranch, the struggles of the early years, the satisfaction of watching it grow, his hopes for expanding his herd in the spring. Lily found herself drawn to the quiet passion in his voice, the evident pride he took in what he'd built with his own hands. In turn, she shared stories of her medical training, the challenges and triumphs, carefully avoiding mention of her family's disapproval. Some wounds were still too fresh to expose to a stranger, no matter how kind. "What made you decide to become a doctor?" Cole asked as he collected their empty plates. "Can't have been an easy path." Lily traced a finger along the rough wooden table, considering her answer. "My mother died in childbirth when I was 14, she finally said. "The doctor did everything he could, but he lacked the knowledge that might have saved her. I decided then that I would learn whatever was necessary to prevent other families from experiencing that loss." Cole's expression softened. "I'm sorry about your mother." "It was a long time ago," Lily said, though the pain had never truly faded. "What about your family? Are they in Montana as well?" A shadow crossed his face. "Lost my parents to typhoid before the war. My brother fell at Gettysburg. There's just me now." The simple statement held volumes of unspoken grief, and Lily felt an unexpected connection to this solitary rancher who understood loss as intimately as she did. "It seems we're both alone in the world," she observed quietly. Cole looked up, meeting her eyes. "Out here, being alone and being lonely aren't necessarily the same thing." He gestured to the window, where the blizzard continued unabated. "Nature has a way of reminding you that you're part of something larger, whether you want to be or not." There was a wisdom in his words that resonated with Lily. For all her education and training, she recognized that this man possessed knowledge of a different sort, born of survival and solitude, of communion with the harsh landscape that surrounded them. As the evening wore on, the wind finally began to subside, though snow continued to fall steadily. Cole built up the fire for the night, then arranged his bedroll on the floor beside the hearth. "Are you sure you'll be comfortable there?" Lily asked, guilt nagging at her. "This is your shelter, after all." Cole smiled slightly as he removed his boots. "I've slept on worse, believe me. During the war, a wooden floor by a fire would have been luxury beyond imagining." Lily nodded, knowing from her hospital work during the conflict that he spoke the truth. She settled back on the cot, pulling the blankets up to her chin. The events of the day caught up with her suddenly, exhaustion sweeping through her body like a wave. "Good night, Cole," she murmured, her eyelids growing heavy. "And thank you again for saving my life." "Good night, Dr. Fairchild," came his quiet reply. "Rest easy. You're safe now." As sleep claimed her, Lily's last conscious thought was that for the first time since arriving in Montana territory, she truly did feel safe. Cole woke before dawn, habit driving him from sleep, despite the extraordinary circumstances. For a moment, he lay still, listening to the changed quality of silence outside the storm had finally passed, leaving behind the muffled quiet that followed heavy snowfall. He glanced toward the cot where Lily slept, her auburn hair spread across the pillow, her face peaceful in repose. In sleep, the determined doctor looked younger, more vulnerable, and Cole felt a renewed surge of gratitude that he'd found her in time. There was something about her that intrigued him beyond her unusual profession, a strength and dignity that reminded him of the few truly remarkable women he'd known in his life. His mother had possessed similar qualities, the same direct gaze, the same unwavering commitment to her chosen path. Cole rose quietly, adding wood to the banked fire and setting coffee to boil. He needed to check on Diablo and assess conditions outside before planning their next move. The doctor needed to return to Whiteridge, and he needed to get back to his ranch, both journeys that would be challenging in deep snow. He pulled on his coat and stepped outside, closing the door softly behind him. The world had been transformed overnight. Snow blanketed everything in pristine white, drifts piled against the cabin walls reaching nearly to the eaves in places. The sky above was clear and brilliantly blue, the morning sun creating a dazzling glare off the unbroken expanse of white. Cole trudged through knee-deep snow to the lean-to where Diablo nickered a greeting, seemingly none the worse for the ordeal. He fed and watered the horse, then assessed their situation with a practiced eye. Travel would be difficult but not impossible. The snow had a crust that would support a horse's weight in most places, and the clear sky promised good weather for the journey. Still, he worried about the doctor's condition. She had survived a close brush with death, and the exertion of travel might prove too much too soon. Lost in thought, Cole didn't hear the cabin door open. Lily's voice startled him. "It's beautiful." He turned to find her standing in the doorway, wrapped in one of his blankets over her now dry clothing, her face lifted to the morning sun. Despite the ordeal she'd endured, she looked remarkably composed, her color returned, her green eyes bright as they surveyed the transformed landscape. "Beautiful but treacherous," Cole replied, making his way back to the cabin. "How are you feeling this morning?" "Much improved," Lily said, stepping aside to let him enter. "Though I suspect I have you to thank for that. You make an excellent nurse, Mr. Callahan." Cole felt an unexpected flush warm his cheeks at the compliment. "Just did what needed doing," he mumbled, moving to check the coffee. "Hungry?" "Starving, actually," Lily admitted, returning to sit on the edge of the cot. "A good sign, medically speaking. It means my body is recovering." They shared a simple breakfast of coffee, dried fruit, and the last of the previous night's cornbread. As they ate, Cole outlined his assessment of travel conditions and his concerns about her health. "I appreciate your concern," Lily said when he'd finished, "but I've imposed on your hospitality long enough. Besides, I need to check on Mrs. Taylor and her baby, assuming the birth has occurred by now." "It's no imposition," Cole said quickly, then felt foolish at his eagerness. "That is, I understand your responsibility to your patients, but your own health must take priority. What good are you to them if you collapse again in the snow?" Lily regarded him thoughtfully, her professional assessment evident in her gaze. "A fair point. What would you suggest?" "Another day of rest," Cole said firmly. "The snow will settle more, making travel easier. I have supplies enough for us both, and your patients will be better served by a fully recovered doctor arriving a day later than one who pushes herself too hard and suffers for it." He could see her weighing his words, the doctor in her acknowledging the medical sense of his argument while the dedicated healer chafed at the delay. "One more day," she finally agreed. "But I insist on departing tomorrow morning, regardless of conditions." Cole nodded, relieved. "That's reasonable. I'll need to check my traps today, make sure they weren't damaged in the storm. Will you be all right here alone for a few hours?" "I believe I can manage," Lily said with a small smile. "I'm not completely helpless, you know." "That much was evident when I found you fighting through a blizzard that would have defeated most men," Cole replied seriously. Their eyes met across the small table, understanding passing between them, mutual respect between two people accustomed to self-reliance, now navigating the unfamiliar territory of dependence on another. After breakfast, Cole prepared to venture out, packing supplies and checking his rifle. Before leaving, he showed Lily where everything was located in the cabin and added extra wood to the fire. "I shouldn't be gone more than 3 hours," he said, pulling on his gloves. "If anything happens, I'll be fine," Lily assured him, amusement touching her lips at his concern. "I've survived much worse than being left alone in a warm cabin with ample provisions." Cole nodded, oddly reluctant to leave. "Just don't try to go anywhere. The snow is deeper than it looks in places." "I promise to be the model of caution," she said solemnly, though her eyes sparkled with suppressed laughter. With a final nod, Cole departed, following the tree line where his traps were set. The snow made progress slow but not impossible, and he found himself enjoying the crisp air and brilliant sunshine after being confined during the storm. As he worked, checking and resetting traps, Cole found his thoughts returning repeatedly to the auburn-haired doctor waiting at his cabin. It had been years since he'd spent significant time in a woman's company, longer still since he'd felt this particular tension, a mixture of attraction, admiration, and curiosity that made him eager to return despite having left just hours ago. By the time Cole headed back to the cabin, the sun was high overhead, reflecting blindingly off the snow. He'd collected 2 rabbits from his traps, enough for a decent stew that would be a welcome change from their previous meals of preserved foods. As he approached the cabin, Cole was surprised to see smoke rising not just from the chimney but from a small fire outside, where Lily stood stirring something in his Dutch oven. She looked up at his approach, raising a hand in greeting. "I hope you don't mind," she called as he drew near. "I found some dried herbs in your supplies and thought I might improve our lunch options." Cole dismounted, leading Diablo to the lean-to before joining her by the fire. "Not at all. What are you making?" "Just a simple broth for now, but I thought it might make a good base for whatever you managed to trap." She glanced at the rabbits tied to his saddle. "Ah, I see you were successful." "You seem quite recovered," Cole observed, noting the healthy color in her cheeks and the steady way she moved despite the deep snow. "Fresh air and sunshine are powerful medicine," Lily replied, stirring the aromatic broth. "As is the security of knowing I'm not about to freeze to death." Cole couldn't help but smile at her dry humor. He set about preparing the rabbits, surprised at how comfortable their shared labor felt. They worked together efficiently, Cole skinning and jointing the rabbits, while Lily prepared the rest of the ingredients for the stew. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Cole asked as he watched her add precisely measured pinches of dried herbs to the broth. "My father insisted I learn all the traditional feminine accomplishments before he would allow me to study medicine," Lily explained. "His theory was that I should be prepared to be a proper wife in case my medical nonsense didn't work out." The hint of bitterness in her tone told Cole there was more to that story. "I take it he wasn't supportive of your ambitions." Lily's hand stilled momentarily. "He believed a woman's highest calling was marriage and motherhood. Anything else was a distraction at best, an abomination at worst." She resumed stirring. "We haven't spoken since I left for Montana." "His loss," Cole said simply. Lily glanced up, surprise evident in her expression. "Most men share his opinion." "Most men are fools, then." Cole met her gaze steadily. "Anyone who can't see your value beyond traditional expectations isn't worth your concern." A flush that had nothing to do with the cold touched Lily's cheeks. "That's a progressive view for a frontier rancher." Cole shrugged, adding the prepared rabbit to the pot. "The war taught me that rigid thinking is a luxury we can't afford. Out here, survival depends on adapting, on using every resource and talent available, regardless of where it comes from." He poked at the fire. "Besides, I've never much cared what most men think." They fell into companionable silence as the stew simmered, each lost in their own thoughts. When they finally brought the pot inside to escape the increasing cold, the cabin filled with the savory aroma of herbs and game. Over what was arguably the best meal either had enjoyed in some time, their conversation flowed easily. Cole found himself sharing stories he hadn't thought about in years: his childhood in Kentucky, his brief time at university before the war intervened, his journey west in search of a place where the past couldn't find him. Lily, in turn, spoke of her struggles at medical school, the professors who had tried to discourage her, the patients who had eventually come to trust her skills. She described cases that had challenged her, lives she'd saved, and the losses that still haunted her. "The hardest part is knowing when you've done all you can," she admitted as they sat by the fire after the meal, cups of coffee warming their hands. "When to keep fighting and when to let go." "That's true of most worthwhile endeavors," Cole observed. "Ranching has taught me similar lessons. Nature has its own plans, and sometimes all human effort counts for nothing in the face of drought or blizzard or disease." "Yet you persevere," Lily noted, studying him over the rim of her cup. "What's the alternative?" Cole asked simply. Lily nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Exactly." As evening approached, they worked together again, this time clearing enough snow from the area around the cabin to make tomorrow's departure easier. Despite her earlier weakness, Lily insisted on helping, and Cole found himself admiring her determination as much as her intellect. By nightfall, the comfortable routine of the previous evening reasserted itself: Cole building up the fire, Lily arranging blankets, each moving around the small space with growing familiarity. "I should change your bandage," Lily said suddenly, gesturing toward Cole's left hand. Cole glanced down, surprised. He'd cut himself while skinning the rabbits, a minor injury he'd wrapped hastily and then forgotten. "It's nothing serious." "Nevertheless, infection is a risk, especially out here far from proper medical facilities." Lily was already retrieving her medical bag. "Consider it partial payment for your rescue." Recognizing there was no point in arguing with a determined doctor, Cole extended his hand. Lily's touch was gentle but clinical as she unwrapped the crude bandage, examined the cut, and cleaned it thoroughly before applying a salve from her supplies and rewrapping it properly. "There," she said, securing the bandage. "Keep it clean and dry and it should heal nicely." Cole flexed his fingers, impressed with her handiwork. "Much better than my efforts, thank you." "You're welcome." Lily packed away her supplies, then hesitated. "I've been thinking about our journey tomorrow." "Oh." Cole tried to ignore the twinge of disappointment at the reminder of their imminent parting. "Yes, I believe it makes sense for us to travel together, at least part of the way." Lily's tone was practical. "The Taylor's homestead lies between here and Whiteridge. I still need to check on Mrs. Taylor, and then I can continue on to town while you return to your ranch." It was a sensible suggestion, yet Cole found himself unreasonably pleased by the prospect of extended time in her company. "That seems wise. The trails will be difficult, and two travelers are safer than one." Lily nodded, apparently satisfied with his agreement. "Then it's settled." She stifled a yawn. "I should rest if we're to make an early start." As she settled onto the cot and Cole arranged his bedroll by the fire, a comfortable silence fell between them. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the occasional settling of snow sliding from the roof. "Cole," Lily's voice came softly through the darkness. "Yes. Thank you for finding me yesterday. I've been so focused on proving myself that I took a foolish risk, if you hadn't come along." "But I did," Cole said gently. "No point dwelling on what didn't happen." He heard her shift beneath the blankets. "Still, I'm grateful. Get some sleep, Dr. Fairchild. Tomorrow will be challenging enough." "Lily," she murmured, her voice already heavy with approaching sleep. "Please call me Lily." Cole smiled into the darkness, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire spreading through his chest. "Good night, Lily." The following morning dawned clear and cold, the temperature well below freezing but the sky a brilliant blue that promised fair weather for their journey. They rose early, sharing a quick breakfast before packing their few belongings and preparing Diablo for the trip. "We'll have to ride double," Cole explained as he saddled the horse. "He's strong enough to carry us both through this snow, but it'll slow us down some." Lily nodded, adjusting her coat and securing her medical bag. "I'm hardly in a position to complain about the transportation arrangements. Without you and Diablo, I'd still be out there." She gestured toward the vast white landscape. Cole helped her mount, then swung up behind her, acutely aware of her proximity as she settled against him. "It's about 5 hours to the Taylor place in good conditions," he said, guiding Diablo away from the cabin. "In this snow could be closer to 8. "Then we should make haste," Lily replied, her voice steady despite the challenging journey ahead. They rode in companionable silence for the first hour, following a ridgeline that Cole knew would eventually lead them to the Taylor homestead. Diablo moved carefully through the snow, sometimes breaking through the crust to flounder briefly before regaining his footing. As the sun climbed higher, warming their faces despite the bitter cold, Cole found himself increasingly aware of Lily's presence, the subtle scent of herbs that clung to her hair, the way she sat straight-backed and alert despite the difficult conditions, the occasional brush of her hand against his as she adjusted her position. "Tell me about Whiteridge," Cole said, breaking the silence. "I haven't been to town in several months." Lily glanced back at him, her face framed by the fur-lined hood of her coat. "It's growing quickly. 2 new saloons since summer, a proper school building under construction, and talk of the railroad coming through by next year." "Progress," Cole murmured, not entirely sure how he felt about it. The isolation of his ranch had suited him for many years, but lately he'd begun to feel the edges of loneliness creeping in, a sensation that had only sharpened during the past 2 days in Lily's company. Not all change is for the better, Lily acknowledged, seeming to read his thoughts. But the town needs a railroad if it's to thrive. The winters are too harsh, the distances too great otherwise. And what about you? Cole asked. Is Whiteridge what you hoped for when you came west? Lily was quiet for a moment before answering. It's becoming so. At first, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. The conditions are primitive compared to Philadelphia, my supplies limited, and the prejudice against a female doctor just as strong as back east in some quarters. She straightened her shoulders. But there's also a freedom here I never found in the city. People judge you more on your actions than your circumstances, and those who do accept my help genuinely need it. The frontier has a way of stripping away pretensions, Cole agreed. Hard to maintain social niceties when you're fighting blizzards and grizzlies. This earned him a small laugh from Lily, the sound warming him more effectively than the winter sunshine. Indeed, though I've yet to encounter a grizzly, thankfully. Let's hope it stays that way, Cole said. They're best admired from a considerable distance. As they continued their journey, the conversation flowed easily between them, touching on everything from books they'd read to their experiences of frontier life. Cole found himself increasingly drawn to Lily's quick mind and forthright manner, her determination and courage in the face of adversity. By midday, they stopped briefly to rest Diablo and share some jerky and dried fruit. The Taylor homestead was still hours away, but Cole found himself already dreading their eventual parting. "What will you do after checking on Mrs. Taylor?" he asked as they prepared to resume their journey. Lily brushed snow from her skirts. "Return to Whiteridge, check on my other patients, and hope no one else decides to have a baby during a blizzard." She smiled wryly. "And you, back to your ranch," Cole nodded, helping her remount. "Winter's my quiet season. Mend fences, repair tack, catch up on reading. Not much else to do until spring." "Sounds peaceful," Lily observed as he settled behind her again. "Mostly," Cole agreed, "though sometimes the quiet gets a bit too deep." The admission slipped out before he could consider it, more vulnerable than he'd intended. Lily didn't respond immediately, but he felt her slight nod of understanding. "I know what you mean," she said quietly as they set off again. "There's a difference between solitude chosen and solitude imposed. My rooms above the apothecary are private enough, but sometimes the silence is heavy." The simple acknowledgement of shared loneliness created a new intimacy between them, one that persisted as they rode on through the afternoon. The sun began its descent toward the western mountains, casting long blue shadows across the snow and dropping the temperature noticeably. "We should reach the Taylor's place before full dark," Cole said, gesturing toward a distant column of smoke rising against the sky. "That's their chimney there." Lily's posture straightened with renewed purpose. "Thank goodness. I've been worried about them constantly." As they drew closer to the homestead, they could make out a small cabin nestled against a stand of pines, a barn and corral visible nearby. Smoke curled invitingly from the stone chimney, and golden lamplight spilled from the windows onto the snow. They were still a quarter-mile away when the cabin door opened, and a man stepped out, shading his eyes against the setting sun. He raised a hand in greeting, then turned and called something over his shoulder. By the time Cole and Lily reached the yard, a small welcoming committee had assembled. A tall, bearded man Cole recognized as John Taylor, an older woman bundled in shawls, and a younger woman holding a blanket-wrapped bundle. "Dr. Fairchild," John called, hurrying forward to help Lily dismount. "We feared the worst when you didn't arrive during the storm. Sent out search parties yesterday once it cleared, but they found no sign of you." "I got caught in the blizzard," Lily explained, reaching for her medical bag. "Lost my horse in a ravine." Mr. Callahan here found me half frozen and took me to shelter. She gestured toward the younger woman. Is that? The woman stepped forward, pride evident in her tired face as she tilted the bundle toward Lily. My son, born the night before the storm hit. Cole watched as Lily's professional demeanor took over, her concern visible as she examined the infant. He's a fine boy, Mrs. Taylor. Any complications with the birth? None, the older woman said firmly. Breech presentation, but I've delivered more than my share of backward babies. Emma did beautifully. Relief washed over Lily's features. I'm so glad. I was desperate to reach you, afraid something might go wrong. You nearly died trying, John Taylor said soberly. We're grateful for your dedication, Doctor, but we wouldn't have wanted it at such a cost. Well, thanks to Mr. Callahan, all ended well, Lily said, glancing back at Cole with a warm smile that made his heart skip unexpectedly. Then we're in your debt, sir, Taylor said, extending his hand to Cole. Please, both of you come inside. Night's falling fast, and you must be cold and hungry after your journey. Cole hesitated, glancing at the darkening sky. I should get back to my ranch. Nonsense, Taylor insisted. It's nearly dark, the temperature's dropping, and you've both had enough danger for 1 week. We've plenty of room, and Emma made venison stew enough for an army. Lily looked up at Cole, her expression questioning. He found he couldn't refuse the unspoken invitation in her eyes. 1 night would be welcome, he conceded. Thank you. The Taylor cabin was warm and welcoming, considerably larger than Cole's line, shack though still modest by Eastern standards. Emma Taylor, despite having given birth just days before, proved a gracious hostess, insisting Cole and Lily take the best seats by the fire while she served stew and fresh bread. Lily examined both mother and baby thoroughly, pronouncing them healthy but advising rest for Emma. Cole observed her work with admiration, noting the gentle confidence of her manner and the genuine care she showed her patients. This was clearly a woman who had found her calling. After the meal, as Emma retired with the baby and the older missus, Taylor began clearing away dishes. John Taylor produced a bottle of whiskey and 3 glasses. A toast, he proposed, to the bravest doctor and the luckiest rancher in Montana Territory. Cole accepted the glass with a nod of thanks, watching as Lily took hers with slight hesitation. To survival, she offered as their glasses clinked, and to being in the right place at the right time. The whiskey burned pleasantly going down, warming Cole from within as he studied Lily in the firelight. The past 3 days had changed something fundamental in his perspective. The solitude he'd cultivated for so long suddenly seemed less appealing when measured against the connection he'd found with this remarkable woman. As the evening progressed, Taylor shared news of the surrounding homesteads and ranches, gossip from Whiteridge, and tales of the recent blizzard's impact. Cole contributed sparingly to the conversation, content to observe Lily's animated responses and the way the firelight played across her features. Eventually, Mrs. Taylor returned to show them to their sleeping arrangements. Lily would share the small bedroom with Emma and the baby, while Cole would bunk in the main room near the fire. Good night, Cole, Lily said as she prepared to retire. And thank you again for everything. Good night, Lily, he replied softly. Sleep well. Long after the others had gone to bed, Cole remained by the fire, contemplating the unexpected turn his life had taken in just a few short days. Tomorrow, Lily would continue to Whiteridge and he would return to his ranch. Their paths had crossed by chance, but now the thought of them diverging again left him restless and dissatisfied. Cole was still awake when dawn broke, having dozed fitfully throughout the night. He rose quietly, pulling on his boots and coat before stepping outside to tend to Diablo. The morning was clear and cold, the sky lightening to pale blue as the sun approached the horizon. He was checking Diablo's hooves when he heard the cabin door open behind him. Turning, he found Lily standing on the porch, wrapped in her coat, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "You're up early," she observed, descending the steps and crossing to join him. "Never was much for sleeping late," Cole replied, straightening. "How are your patients this morning?" "Doing very well. Emma is recovering quickly and the baby is strong and healthy." Lily's expression softened. "They've named him Nathan after her father." Cole nodded approvingly. "A good name." An awkward silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Cole busied himself with Diablo's saddle, aware of Lily watching him. "Mr. Taylor says there's a shorter route to Whiteridge than the one I usually take," she finally said. "It passes near your ranch, apparently." Cole looked up, hope stirring unexpectedly. "That's true. Cuts nearly 2 hours off the journey to town." He hesitated, then added, "I could show you if you'd like." Lily's smile was like sunrise breaking across the mountains. "I would like that very much." They departed after breakfast, laden with provisions Emma Taylor insisted they take and well wishes from the entire family. The day was milder than the previous one, the temperature rising enough that the snow began to soften and settle, making travel easier. As they rode double on Diablo again, Cole found himself acutely aware that each passing mile brought them closer to a crossroads literally and figuratively. His ranch lay to the east of the main trail to Whiteridge, requiring a decision when they reached the junction. "Tell me about your ranch," Lily said as they traversed a long, snow-covered meadow. "You mentioned you're expanding." Grateful for the distraction from his thoughts, Cole described his property, the herd he was building, the improvements he hoped to make in the coming year. "It's not much compared to the big operations further east, but the land's good and the water rights secure." "It sounds wonderful," Lily said, sincerity evident in her voice. "A place truly your own, shaped by your vision." "It's been my whole life for 15 years, Cole acknowledged. "Though lately I've been thinking it might be time for changes." "What kind of changes?" Cole chose his words carefully. "The kind that transform a house into a home, the kind that fill empty rooms with voices and laughter." He paused. "The kind that require more than one person to achieve." Lily was quiet for so long that Cole feared he'd overstepped, revealed too much too soon. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I've been considering changes myself. Whiteridge has accepted me more readily than I expected, but my practice is still limited by prejudice and tradition. I've thought about establishing a proper clinic, somewhere people could come for treatment regardless of their preconceptions about female doctors." "That sounds like a worthy ambition," Cole said, encouraged by her willingness to share her own future plans. "The difficulty is finding the right location," Lily continued. "It would need to be accessible to multiple communities, not just Whiteridge, somewhere central to the homesteads and ranches in the area." Cole's mind immediately began calculating distances, mapping the region mentally. "My ranch sits at the junction of 3 valleys," he said slowly. "Less than half a day's ride from Whiteridge, but also accessible to the settlements along the river and the mining camps in the foothills." He felt Lily stiffen slightly in the saddle. "Are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that your clinic might find a suitable home on Callahan land," Cole said, his heart pounding as he took the leap. "And that its doctor might consider whether her future plans could accommodate a rancher who finds himself unexpectedly reluctant to return to solitude." For several agonizing moments, the only sound was Diablo's steady gait through the snow. Then Lily turned slightly, enough that Cole could see her profile, her eyes wide with surprise, a flush spreading across her cheeks that had nothing to do with the cold. "That's a significant suggestion, Mr. Callahan," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her expression. "Especially from a man I've known less than 4 days. Some things don't require years to recognize," Cole replied simply. "The blizzard that nearly took your life also cleared away my certainty about the path I've been walking. I'm not proposing marriage, Lily, not yet. I'm proposing possibility." Lily faced forward again, but not before Cole glimpsed the smile that curved her lips. "Possibility," she repeated softly. "I find I'm rather fond of that word." They rode in companionable silence for some time after that, each absorbed in private thoughts, yet connected by the understanding that had grown between them. When they finally reached the junction where their paths would traditionally diverge, Cole reined Diablo to a halt. "Whiteridge lies that way," he said, nodding toward the northwest trail. "My ranch is about 4 miles east." He hesitated. "Which direction shall we take, Dr. Fairchild?" Lily turned fully this time, meeting his gaze directly. "I have patients expecting me in Whiteridge," she said, and Cole felt his heart sink momentarily before she continued. "But I believe I could spare a day or two to evaluate a potential clinic location before returning to town." Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of caution and daring. "If the offer still stands." The hope that bloomed in Cole's chest was almost painful in its intensity. "The offer stands," he assured her, "for as long as you need to make up your mind." Lily's smile deepened. "Then I believe we should head east, Mr. Callahan. I find myself curious to see this strategic junction of valleys you've described." Cole guided Diablo onto the eastern trail, a profound sense of rightness settling over him as they rode toward his ranch, no longer just his destination, but potentially the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find in the aftermath of a Montana blizzard. The Callahan Ranch came into view late that afternoon, a sturdy 2-story cabin built of squared logs, a large barn, several outbuildings and corrals currently empty of cattle, which would be sheltered in the lower meadows during winter. Smoke rose from the cabin chimney, evidence that Cole's ranch hand, an elderly former trapper named Jenkins, had maintained the home fires during his absence. "It's beautiful," Lily said as they approached, genuine appreciation in her voice. "You built this yourself?" "Every log," Cole confirmed, a hint of pride coloring his tone. "Started with a one-room shelter not much bigger than the line shack. Added to it year by year as the herd grew." As they rode into the yard, the cabin door opened, and a weathered man with a white beard emerged, rifle in hand until he recognized Cole. "Thought you might have frozen solid out there," Jenkins called by way of greeting, his sharp eyes taking in Lily's presence with undisguised curiosity. "Nearly did," Cole replied as he dismounted and helped Lily down. "Jenkins, this is Dr. Lily Fairchild from Whiteridge. Doctor, my ranch hand and occasional conscience, Ezra Jenkins." Lily extended her hand, which Jenkins took after a moment's hesitation. "A pleasure, Mr. Jenkins. I hope our unexpected arrival isn't an inconvenience." "Doctor, eh?" Jenkins's bushy eyebrows rose. First time Cole's brought home anything more interesting than a lame calf in 15 years. No inconvenience at all. He turned to Cole with a knowing look. "I'll see to your horse and then make myself scarce in the bunkhouse." As Jenkins led Diablo toward the barn, Cole shook his head with a mixture of embarrassment and affection. "Don't mind him. He's been telling me I need company besides his cranky self for years." "He seems observant," Lily noted with a small smile. "Too observant by half," Cole agreed, gesturing toward the cabin. "Shall we? It's not as grand as the tailor's place, but it's warm and the coffee's usually drinkable." The interior of the cabin revealed Cole's character more clearly than anything he might have said. The main room was simply but comfortably furnished with a sofa and chairs arranged before a large stone fireplace, bookshelves lining one wall and filled to capacity, a solid oak dining table with 4 chairs, and a kitchen area dominated by a cast-iron cookstove. Everything was meticulously maintained, with none of the slovenly disarray common to bachelor establishments. The floors were swept, the furniture dusted, and the copper pots hanging above the stove polished to a warm glow. Lily moved immediately to the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines with evident delight. Thoreau, Emerson, Whitman, Shakespeare, Milton, Homer. She turned to Cole with new appreciation in her eyes. "You've quite the library for a frontier rancher." Cole shrugged, hanging his coat on a peg by the door. "Books are poor conversationalists but excellent companions on long winter nights." He crossed to the stove, checking the fire and adding wood. "Would you like to see where the clinic might go while I prepare something to eat?" Lily's eyes widened slightly. "You've already thought about where it would be located?" "I've been thinking about little else since our conversation this morning," Cole admitted. He gestured toward the window. "From that rise beyond the barn, you can see all 3 valleys. There's a level area that would be perfect for a building, with good drainage and protection from the prevailing winds. Close enough to the main house for convenience, but separate enough for privacy." The intensity of his planning clearly surprised Lily, but her expression held more pleasure than alarm. "I'd like to see it, yes, though perhaps after we've both had something hot to drink." The journey was colder than I expected. Cole nodded, moving to fill the coffee pot. "Of course. Make yourself comfortable. Jenkins keeps the place in good order, but it's been a while since these walls saw a woman's presence." Lily removed her coat, draping it carefully over a chair. "It's a lovely home, Cole. You should be proud of what you've built here." As Cole prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread, Lily explored the main room, examining the books, the few photographs on the mantel, and the handcrafted furniture that spoke of Cole's skill as a woodworker as well as a rancher. They ate at the oak table, conversation flowing easily between them as it had since their first meal together in the line shack. Cole described his daily routines, the rhythm of ranch life through the seasons, and his plans for expanding the herd in the spring. Lily shared stories of her practice in Whiteridge, the challenges of frontier medicine, and her vision for a clinic that could serve the region's scattered population. "The biggest obstacle is getting people to travel for preventive care," she explained as they finished their meal. "They'll make the journey for emergencies, broken bones, difficult births, serious illnesses, but convincing them to come for regular examinations or minor complaints is nearly impossible. That's why location is so critical. It needs to be somewhere people pass naturally in their comings and goings." "Like a junction of 3 valleys," Cole suggested with a slight smile. "Exactly." Lily's eyes met his, acknowledgement of his foresight in her gaze. "It would need to be welcoming, not intimidating. Many people still fear doctors as harbingers of bad news. And having a female doctor might make it more approachable for women and children," Cole added, earning a look of surprised approval from Lily. "Yes, though some men still refuse to be treated by a woman." "Their loss," Cole said simply, rising to clear their plates. "Would you like to see the site now? We've about an hour of good daylight left." They bundled back into their coats and set out on foot, Cole leading the way past the barn and up a gentle slope to the east. The snow had begun to melt under the day's sunshine, making the walking easier though still challenging in places. At the crest of the rise, Cole stopped, allowing Lily to take in the view. From this vantage point, the 3 valleys spread before them like the spokes of a wheel, the northern valley leading toward Whiteridge, the eastern one extending toward the mountains where Cole's cattle wintered in sheltered meadows, and the southern one following a creek that eventually joined the main river. "Oh," Lily breathed, turning slowly to absorb the panorama. "It's perfect. You can see for miles in every direction." Cole nodded, watching her reaction rather than the familiar landscape. "The clinic would stand here," he said, gesturing to the relatively flat area just below the crest. Protected from the north winds by the rise but visible from all three approaches. There's a spring nearby that never freezes, even in the coldest winters. Lily walked the perimeter of the site, her expression thoughtful as she considered angles, access points, and potential challenges. "How much snow accumulates here?" she asked, ever practical. "Less than you might expect," Cole replied. "The wind keeps it relatively clear, and the southern exposure means it melts quickly after storms." She nodded, continuing her assessment. "It would need to be substantial examination rooms, a surgery, recovery space, living quarters for a nurse or assistant." She glanced at Cole. "It would be a significant undertaking." "I've built one home on this land," Cole said quietly. "I could build another." The implication of his words hung in the air between them, neither quite ready to address it directly. Lily turned back to the view, her expression unreadable as the setting sun bathed her face in golden light. "It would change everything," she finally said. "For both of us." "Change isn't always something to fear," Cole replied, moving to stand beside her. "Sometimes it's the very thing we've been waiting for without realizing it." Lily looked up at him, vulnerability evident in her eyes despite her composed expression. "4 days ago, I was certain of my path. Now—" She gestured to the landscape before them. "Now I'm standing on a mountainside considering possibilities I never imagined." "Is that a bad thing?" Cole asked softly. A small smile touched her lips. "No, unexpected but not unwelcome." She hesitated, then added, "I've always been cautious, Cole. Methodical. I had to be to succeed in a profession that constantly expected me to fail. Impulsiveness wasn't a luxury I could afford." "This doesn't have to be impulsive," Cole assured her. "Take all the time you need. The land will be here, so will I." The simple promise seemed to ease something in Lily's expression. "Thank you for understanding. I need to return to Whiteridge tomorrow. I have patients expecting me, responsibilities I can't abandon." "Of course," Cole agreed, though he couldn't entirely suppress the disappointment that surged at the thought of her departure. "I'll take you back in the morning." As they walked back to the cabin, the setting sun casting long shadows across the snow, Cole was acutely aware of the crossroads they had reached, Lily needing time to consider the drastic change in direction he'd proposed, and he needing to accept that her decision, whatever it might be, would be made with the same careful deliberation she applied to all aspects of her life. That evening, they sat before the fire, sharing coffee and conversation as the temperature outside plummeted and the stars emerged in the clear night sky. Cole showed Lily the journals he'd kept since arriving in Montana, detailed records of weather patterns, cattle breeding, the natural cycles of the land, and his observations of the changing territory. "You should publish these," Lily said, turning pages filled with Cole's precise handwriting and occasional sketches. "The scientific community would find your long-term observations invaluable." Cole laughed softly. "I doubt Eastern academics would be interested in the ramblings of an unlettered rancher." "Unlettered?" Lily raised an eyebrow, gesturing toward his extensive library. "Hardly. And first-hand observation by someone who lives intimately with the land is exactly what scientists need. Too many theories are formed by men who have never left their university offices." Her passionate defense warmed Cole more effectively than the blazing fire. Perhaps someday, he conceded, when the ranch is more established. When the clinic is built, Lily added, then looked startled at her own words. Cole studied her face in the firelight, hope stirring at this unconscious revelation of her thinking. Is that what you want, Lily? Truly? She set the journal aside, her expression serious as she met his gaze. I want to be certain, for both our sakes, what you're suggesting, a partnership of this nature, it's not something to enter into lightly. No, Cole agreed. It's not. I need time to consider all aspects, practical, professional, personal. Lily's voice was steady, though Cole could see the emotion behind her composed exterior. My practice in Whiteridge, the logistics of establishing a clinic, the implications for. She hesitated. For us, Cole finished quietly. Lily nodded. Yes, for us, whatever that might mean. Cole leaned forward, taking her hand gently in his. I understand, Lily. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. All I ask is that you consider the possibility that you leave room in your careful plans for something neither of us expected to find. Her fingers tightened around his. I will. I promise. That night, Cole gave Lily his bedroom while he slept on the sofa before the fire. Sleep came slowly as he reflected on the extraordinary turn his life had taken. 4 days ago, he had been a solitary rancher tracking a mountain lion through his territory. Now, he was contemplating a future that included not just a medical clinic on his land, but potentially a partnership with a remarkable woman who challenged and intrigued him as no one had in years. Morning arrived crisp and clear, the temperature having dropped further overnight. Cole rose early, building up the fire and preparing breakfast before Lily emerged from the bedroom, her hair neatly arranged and her traveling clothes pressed as best she could manage. I've saddled the horses, Cole said as they ate. Jenkins is lending his mare for your journey. She's gentle but sure-footed in the snow. Lily nodded her thanks. You needn't accompany me all the way to Whiteridge. I'm sure you have responsibilities here that have been neglected during our adventure. I'll see you safely to town, Cole insisted, his tone brooking no argument. The trail can be treacherous, especially near the river crossing. They departed shortly after sunrise, riding side by side through the snow-covered landscape. The day was brittle with cold but beautiful, the snow glittering like diamond dust in the morning light. Their conversation was sparse but comfortable, each lost in private thoughts about the future. As they approached Whiteridge shortly after noon, the small frontier town came into view, a single main street lined with false-fronted buildings, smoke rising from scattered chimneys, and horses hitched before the general store and saloon. Despite its modest appearance, the town showed signs of the growth. Lily had mentioned new construction at the northern end, increased traffic on the rutted main road, and an overall air of bustle that suggested prosperity. Where can I take you? Cole asked as they rode past the town's simple wooden welcome sign. The apothecary, Lily replied, pointing toward a 2-story building with a green-painted door. My rooms are above it, and Mr. Hanson will have accumulated a list of patients needing attention during my absence. They drew up before the apothecary, and Cole dismounted to help Lily down, though she hardly needed the assistance. Her independence was one of the qualities he most admired in her, even as it challenged his ingrained protective instincts. Thank you for escorting me, Lily said formally, aware of the curious glances from passers-by. A lady doctor was unusual enough in Whiteridge, a lady doctor arriving in the company of a rancher known for his solitary habits was cause for significant interest. Cole nodded, suddenly reluctant to release her hand. Will you write to me? Let me know your thoughts on the clinic proposal. I will, Lily promised, her professional demeanor softening slightly. Give me 2 weeks to organize my practice and consider all angles, Then I'll have an answer for you." 2 weeks, Cole agreed, forcing himself to step back. "Safe journey home, Dr. Fairchild, and you, Mr. Callahan." As Cole mounted Diablo and turned back toward the trail that would lead to his ranch, he felt simultaneously lighter and heavier, for having found a connection he hadn't realized he was missing. Heavier with the uncertainty of whether that connection would have the chance to deepen into something lasting. The 2 weeks that followed were among the longest of Cole's life. He threw himself into ranch work with renewed vigor, mending fences damaged in the blizzard, checking on his herd in the winter pastures, and preparing for the spring calving season. In the evenings, he found himself sketching plans for the clinic, refining the layout based on his conversations with Lily, calculating lumber needs and construction timelines. Jenkins watched these activities with knowing eyes, but limited his comments to occasional grunts of approval at the plans taking shape on Cole's drafting table. It wasn't until the 10th day that the old man finally broke his relative silence on the matter. "She'll come back," Jenkins said as they sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the spring breeding schedule. Cole looked up, startled by the direct reference to the subject they'd been carefully avoiding. "What makes you so sure?" Jenkins chuckled, the sound like dry leaves rustling. "Seen the way she looked at this place like she was already measuring it for curtains, and the way she looked at you like she was measuring you for something else entirely." Despite himself, Cole felt a flush rising up his neck. "It's complicated, Jenkins. She has a career, responsibilities in town." "Complications have a way of working themselves out when two people want the same thing badly enough," Jenkins observed, returning to his coffee. "Besides, that clinic idea of yours is a good one. Region needs a proper doctor within reach, not just when emergencies drive folks to town." Cole nodded, grateful for the old man's support even as he tempered his own hopes. Lily's careful nature meant she would consider all aspects thoroughly before making any decision. He respected that thoughtfulness, even as he found himself counting the days until her promised response. On the 14th day, Cole was in the barn repairing a broken harness when the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew his attention. He stepped outside, shading his eyes against the winter sun, his heart leaping at the sight of a familiar figure on horseback coming up the road from Whiteridge. Lily rode with confidence, her back straight, her auburn hair partially visible beneath her hat. As she drew closer, Cole could see she wasn't alone. A wagon followed behind her, driven by a man Cole recognized as Tom Hanson, the Whiteridge apothecary, with what appeared to be several crates and trunks in the wagon bed. Cole remained rooted in place as Lily reached the yard and dismounted gracefully, handing her reins to Jenkins, who had materialized from the bunkhouse. She removed her gloves as she approached Cole, her expression composed but her eyes bright with some emotion he couldn't quite identify. "You're right on schedule," Cole said by way of greeting, his voice steadier than he felt. "I've always valued punctuality," Lily replied, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "May we speak privately?" Cole nodded, leading her into the house and closing the door behind them. In the familiar surroundings of his main room, he turned to face her, hope and apprehension warring in his chest. Lily removed her hat, setting it carefully on the table before meeting his eyes directly. "I've considered your proposal from every angle, Cole. The practical aspects, the professional implications, the personal consequences. And," Cole prompted when she paused, "and I've concluded that the potential benefits far outweigh the risks." Her formal tone belied the warmth in her eyes. "The clinic is a sound idea, medically and economically. This location is indeed ideal for serving the region. The partnership you've proposed would allow me to practice medicine more effectively than I could in town, reaching patients who would otherwise go without care. Cole's heart sank slightly at her clinical assessment. I see. A sensible business arrangement, then. Lily stepped closer, her composure giving way to a more vulnerable expression. That's what I told myself at first, that I was making a rational, professional decision. She took a deep breath. But the truth, Cole Callahan, is that I haven't stopped thinking about you since the moment you carried me through that blizzard. The simple admission broke through Cole's careful restraint. In 2 strides, he closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. Lily, let me finish, she insisted gently. I've spent my entire adult life making safe, calculated choices, proving myself capable and professional at every turn. But what I felt in those 3 days with you, the connection, the understanding, it's not something that can be analyzed or quantified. Her fingers tightened around his. It's not something I'm willing to walk away from out of caution or convention. Cole released her hands only to frame her face gently between his palms. Are you saying yes to the clinic or to me? Both, Lily whispered, her eyes searching his. If you'll still have me. In answer, Cole lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that began tenderly but quickly deepened as the feelings they'd held in check for 2 weeks finally found expression. Lily's arms wound around his neck as she responded with a passion that matched his own, her body fitting perfectly against his as though they'd been made for each other. When they finally parted, breathless and flushed, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I take it those are your belongings in Hanson's wagon, Lily laughed softly, the sound filling the room with a warmth Cole had never realized was missing until now. Some of them, medical supplies primarily and books, the rest will follow once we've built the clinic. She hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Was I presumptuous? No, Cole assured her, drawing her closer. You were exactly right, as I suspect you usually are. He glanced toward the window where Hanson could be seen unloading crates under Jenkins's watchful eye. Though I believe we may have shocked the good people of Whiteridge with your abrupt departure. Let them talk, Lily said with newfound boldness. I've spent too long worrying about others' expectations. Besides, she added with a mischievous glint in her eye, I left them a note explaining that I'm establishing a regional medical clinic in partnership with a respected rancher. All perfectly proper and professional. And what of the personal aspects of this partnership? Cole asked, his tone teasing though his eyes remained serious. Did your note address those as well? Lily's expression softened. Some things are not for public consumption, Mr. Callahan, but I believe our intentions toward each other will become apparent in due course. She touched his face gently. I don't take this step lightly, Cole. When I commit, it's with my whole heart. As do I, Cole promised, capturing her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. We have time to let things develop naturally between us, Lily. I'm not asking for more than you're ready to give. The gratitude in her eyes told him he'd said exactly the right thing. For a woman accustomed to fighting for her place in the world, the freedom to set her own pace in this new relationship was perhaps the greatest gift he could offer. We should help Hanson unload, Lily said after a moment, practical as ever despite the emotion of the moment. And then perhaps you could show me those clinic plans you mentioned in your letter. I have some additional ideas about the layout. Cole laughed, delighted by her seamless transition from tender moment to practical planning. Of course, Dr. Fairchild, and perhaps afterward we might discuss how soon construction can begin. As they stepped outside together to greet Hanson and direct the unloading of Lily's belongings, Cole was struck by how right it felt to have her beside him, this remarkable woman, who had nearly died in a blizzard, until fate or providence had placed him in her path. Spring arrived early that year, the snow melting to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the softened earth. By April, construction of the Fairchild Clinic was well underway, the framework rising on the rise Cole had shown Lily that first day. Cole had insisted on naming the facility after her, despite Lily's initial protests. "Your reputation as a physician will draw patients more effectively than my name as a rancher," he'd argued, and eventually she'd conceded the point with characteristic grace. Their partnership evolved naturally over those first months, professional respect deepening into profound affection, and affection blossoming into love neither had expected to find. Lily maintained her professional independence even as she integrated seamlessly into ranch life, and Cole found his world enriched immeasurably by her presence. They were married in June, a simple ceremony performed by the Whiteridge minister on the very spot where the clinic neared completion. The entire community turned out, ranchers and townspeople alike, many of whom had benefited from Lily's medical skills and Cole's quiet generosity over the years. As they spoke their vows beneath a clear Montana sky, with the three valleys spreading before them like a promise of all that lay ahead, Cole and Lily exchanged a look that contained their entire journey from that desperate rescue in a howling blizzard to this moment of public commitment. "Who would have thought?" Lily whispered as they turned to face their assembled friends and neighbors as husband and wife. "That nearly freezing to death would be the best thing that ever happened to me. I prefer to think it was meeting me that was the fortunate occurrence," Cole replied with a smile, "rather than your brush with mortality." Lily's laughter rang out, bright and joyful in the summer air. "Perhaps you're right. Though I maintain that some good can come from even the direst circumstances." "On that, Dr. Callahan, we are in complete agreement," Cole said, drawing her close for a kiss that promised a lifetime of partnership, respect, and enduring love, all born from a chance encounter in the wild heart of Montana's unforgiving winter. The Fairchild Clinic opened its doors in July of 1886, the first medical facility of its kind in the region. Within a year, its reputation had spread throughout the territory, drawing patients from as far as 50 miles away. Lily's skill as a physician, combined with Cole's practical knowledge of the land and its people, created a haven of healing unlike anything the frontier had seen before. And in the years that followed, as their family grew to include 2 sons and a daughter who would eventually follow in her mother's footsteps as a physician, Cole and Lily often reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together, a blizzard that had nearly claimed her life becoming instead the storm that had cleared the path to their shared future, bright and boundless as the Montana sky above their home.